Thank you for Mary's kind introduction. My name is Li Hailong. I'm now working in West China Second University Hospital at Chengdu City, and I'm so glad to have this opportunity to share my work with you. Today's title is Drug Safety Signal Detection in Regional Healthcare Database using the Tree-Based Scan Statistics. Actually, it's part of my PhD thesis in Peking University, and my supervisor is Professor Zhan Ziyan. First is the disclosures. This work was founded by the National Natural Health Science Foundation of China. Here's the outline of my talking today. First, I would like to go through some background with you. Since the early 1970s, spontaneous reporting has been the cornerstone of the signal detection in drug safety surveillance. It works well for rare and acute adverse drug reactions, but it also suffers from some limitations such as under or selective reporting or absence of the actual numbers of the exposed patients. That can potentially hamper or delay the identification of these safety signals. Although this signal detection based on the SR is still improving, and the availability of this large healthcare database opens opportunities to us to rapidly and effectively to detect the safety signals. Here's the methods for safety signal detection in healthcare database. First is the disproportionality analysis, including the frequency-based methods like ROR, PR, and Bayesian-based like BCPNN and GPS. The second one is the traditional pharmacoepi designs like cohort study, case control, and self-control design. And there's other methods like sequence symmetry analysis and tree-based scan statistics. So I'm going to talk about the methods. The tree-based scan statistic, we used to call it TreeScan, is a statistical data mining tool for signal detection. And when we using the data mining methods, it is difficult to decide prior what levels of specificity to use for the AE definitions. Like we always wondering, is there increased risk for a very specific diagnosis like acute liver failure, or for a range of related diagnosis like any liver disease? So this method is going to look for the exists risk in any of a large number of the potential AEs, and it also adjusts for multiple testing inherent in the large numbers of the overlapping groups which we evaluate. There are two main elements for these methods. First is the tree structures. We first map the tree according to the basis of a hierarchical structure of classification used for coding events like ICD-9 or ICD-10 and drugs. And the roots of the tree corresponds to the broadest definition of a given event, and the nodes corresponding to the different sub-level definitions, and the leaves correspond to the codes with the finest definitions, and the branches connect all these things together. And the second element is the scan statistic. And for each leaf, we can observe the numbers and the confounding adjusted expected number of exposed persons who experienced the specific event. We can compute it, and then all the possible samples of a given root or node or leaf event's path weight are tested simultaneously using the log likelihood ratio test statistic. And the method used Monte Carlo hypothesis test to formally adjust the p-values for multiple testing. So actually this method has previously been applied for occupational disease surveillance by Professor Martin Kaldorf from Harvard University. And in 2013, it was the first time to apply it to the drug safety surveillance. And then, in that study, researchers used a 3 million members claim database, and combined with this method, they assess safety of selected antifungal and diabetes drugs. And then there are also this method also been used for vaccine safety studies in FDA Sentinel program. So that's the background. So we have two aims for our study, because there's not much quantitative studies about the tree scans. So we would like to apply this method for detecting adverse events, signals for statins in a healthcare database, and then we evaluate the performance of it. Further, we compare this method to other 3 traditional methods. Here's the methods. First, the data sources come from the Yingzhou healthcare database. Yingzhou is the largest district in Ningbo City, and Ningbo is the coastal city in eastern China. There are about 1.24 million residents in the district, in Yingzhou district. And you could find more details about the database in this article. So the owner of the database is Yingzhou Health and Family Planning Commission. Yingzhou CDC is under its supervision and responsible for administrating the database. And the data is collected by the Health Information System, which is developed, maintained by a Shanghai company. So this system was initiated in 2005. By 2010, this system covered all the hospitals in Yingzhou district. In 2016, a big data platform was built for scientific research based on this database. So the Yingzhou Health Information System covers 3 general hospitals, 24 community health centers, and 287 community health service stations. The system mainly has 3 data sources, including the hospital, the public health, and community health. This table lists the number, the major types of information and tables and variables. You can see the different information in both different tables and different tables for different variables. So this slide shows an example of how to link all these different tables together so we can better analyze the data by using the key variables in each tables. So for data processing, we first link all this data together, and then we detect the missing values and outliers and deal with it, and we finally encoding the category data. For the study design, we use a cohort study, and we include the patient older than 18 years old with a diagnosis of hypertension in Yingzhou healthcare database from 2010 to 2016. Then we identify our target drug is statins. So we identify the statin users according to the prescription information of out and inpatient records. And AEs were identified by using the ICD-10 codes of the out and inpatient diagnosis. So we want to establish a set of reference signals so we can better evaluate the performance of the method. First, we refer to a set of ICD-10 codes to identify the 8 adverse drug events in administrative health data, which is synthesized in a systematic review. Then we use a strategy for the construction of the reference standard to evaluate the signal detection methods. It is also reported in an article on this. Then we compare the signals generated by the methods to the standard reference, and we use the methods of diagnostic tests to evaluate them. Then the sensitivity, the specificity, and positive PPV and MPV and accuracy AUC of the methods are calculated for evaluation. Then we compare the tree scan to our 3 signals mining methods, including the CRU, COHO, BCPNN, and GPS. So there is our package called PHVID, which could perform these methods. And the result with FDR just p-value less than 0.05 and RR larger than 1 were considered as a signal. So we choose the AUC as the primary indicator, and we further test the statistical significance of difference between the areas under the 2 curves or with the method of the loan. And we also perform the sensitivity analysis. Actually, we conduct the same analysis in 2 other settings with more sophisticated design. The first one is the new user cohort, and the second one is the propensity score matching cohort. So next is the results and the discussion. A total of 224,000 patients were finally enrolled and divided into 2 groups, 85,000 studying users and 138,000 non-users. So this table shows describe the baseline characteristics between 2 groups. So we can see there are significant difference between these 2 groups involving the age, BMI, and other comorbidities. I didn't list all these variables in it because it's too large. And after reviewing the studies about the safety of the study, we finally established a standard signal set of 126 AEs, including 13 true signals and 113 false signals. So this table shows the performance. This table shows the performance of the tree scan by comparing the signals to standard signals. We can see 9 of the signals are no adverse effects, and the sensitivity and specificity is about 29% and 82%, and the AUC is around 75%. So in these tables, we shows the performance of the 4 signal mining methods. We can see the AUC of tree scan was around 75%, which was significantly larger than other 3 methods. Here we shows the sensitivity and the specificity, PPV and MPV of these 4 methods. So the AUC with the similar sensitivity, tree scan has the highest specificity and PPV and MPV. And for accuracy and unit index and AUC, tree scan also outperform other 3 methods in overall. In the The results of sensitivity analysis remained similar to in the original cohort, and AUC of tree scan was about 79% and 77% for in these two settings, and they were significant larger than the other three methods respectively. So here's a brief discussion. Compare our study to previous tree scan studies. We use regional healthcare databases rather than claim data. So it means that means we could include more confounding variables in while we are analyzing the data, and we conduct a quantitative evaluation of the tree scan, and not just interpret the signal. And actually, there has been a lot of the evaluation studies for signals detection methods. They usually carry out in one or more healthcare databases across different countries, including UK, USA, European country, and Australia, and so on. The population of this study range from 250,000 to 190 millions. And the AUC of these methods range from 23% to 86%. And so we found AUC of tree scan varied from 70 to 79% in our study, which above the average. So let's summarize the strengths and limitations of our study. It is the first tree scan study using the Chinese healthcare database, and it's a quantitative evaluation by comparing the signals generated by the method to the standard signals. And we further compare the tree scan to three other traditional signal detection methods. And there are also some limitations, like there are some bias and potential confoundings might not be considered in our study. For example, we choose the non-users as control groups, and the study population is only from the city, so the generalization of the results is limited, and the sample size is not large enough to detect rare AEs. Here's the conclusion. Tree scan performs better than proposed BCPNN and GPS, and it is proposed as a complement for other signal detection methods in drug safety active surveillance. So we also need a larger Chinese healthcare database to evaluate these signal detection methods, so we can better choose one to carry out in our following drug safety surveillance, active surveillance. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. That was a very good talk. I just wanted to get a sense of when you selected the ICD codes for the outcomes of interest, you were focusing particularly on the liver injury and on the kidney injury. Could you just take us through how you decided on the selection of those particular codes and the trade-offs between the sensitivity and specificity, and if you have plans for validation? And I ask because some of the codes are relatively non-specific for toxic liver disease or drug-induced acute kidney injury, and I was just trying to get a sense of how you may have selected those particular codes and if there were plans for validation compared to medical records in the future.
Okay, thank you for your questions. That's a very good question. Actually, we just simply refer to systematic review results. In their work, they summarize all the ICD-10 codes for detecting the adverse events in the like observational studies. So they summarize it, and they also give some like they evaluate them. They give some levels, like considering the sensitivity and specificity of it. We just simply include all of it into our study, because I think in my study is we always need to balance the trade-off between the, you need to rapidly to detect some signals and the simplicity of your design. So I prefer to automatically and rapidly to detect the signals first, and then we try to see what we can do to further improve our results. That's what I'm thinking when I'm doing this.
Other questions?
Thank you. It's a very interesting talk. So I only have one question related to your main conclusion. So you mentioned that your TreeScan method have much better performance with other methodologies. But to me, it seems like its performance only have an improvement for your data. So I'm just wondering, have you tried to do some simulations to justify the method systematically better than the other methodologies?
Oh, sorry, I'm not following your question. Could you ask again?
Yeah. Okay. So it's like this. So.
Oh. Yeah. Yes. That's right. It may be not probably. I conclude that this method is outperformed other three methods. We only find these results in our study, but it really needs more. As I said before, I need more studies in a larger database, more general database, general population, so we can better make a better conclusion. Thank you for your suggestion.
Thank you for your very clear and nice presentation. I'm Chu Young-shin from South Korea. And can I ask why you choose statin as your simulation example? And the second question, I think to detecting a signal is very important, but finding a new signal which was not very known widely might be very important for signal detection. And have you tried which methods find the new signal, new adverse event, which was not previously known? Have you compared the new adverse event by 4 or 5 methods you've tried?
Okay, thank you for also good questions. The first question is why I choose statin as our target drugs. It is because there are many people taking statins in our population, so it ensures that we have a large populations, and also the adverse effect, the ADR of the statins is we know we can confirm the AEs or the ADRs of these drugs. There are many studies. So it could be better to establish a standard reference, so we can compare our signals to it to evaluate our methods. Sorry for what's the second question?
Have you tried to compare the clinically new adverse events by GMS or BCPNN or something else. The difference of clinical adverse event, difference of adverse event, newly founded event.
I just use yes, I use the event comes first. I don't know if it is the events if you is the same thing you mentioned. Question.
It's the next step. If we establish the method, if the method is okay, then we can use the method to test the new adverse effects.
So I'm going to go ahead and start asking my questions. You have lots of different comparisons here. So for your signal detection methods, you're looking at statins as your exposure. What's your comparator group there? You also have reference signals. What types of reference signals were you looking at in the literature? And then for your cohort, you have a non-statin user. Can you describe that group as well? Who are your comparators for these three big analyses?
So actually, when we try to detect signals using the tree scan, we compare the starting users to the non-users.
So
And
people
then-
with hypertension who are not using statins.
Yes, yes. And there are some strategies that we try to, minimize the bias and confoundings. We use some, we do the sensitivity analysis in two settings, like the new user designs and also the PSF propensity scores matching cohort. So I think that's what we can do now, and then we generate the signals of the methods in different settings, and we all compare to the standard signals.
So those standard signals, can you tell us about what those were? What were the comparisons there?
They are from different studies.
Studies that also
Studies
look
like
at
observational study and ASCII, they would use like active comparators, and some of them like observational study, they would also use non-users.
and all among people who have hypertension?
No. Yeah, you are right. It's based on the systematic review. Yeah, yes, but you are right. It's not focused on the hypertension. Yeah.
I see. It's different. It probably different in different populations. Yes.
Hi, presentation. I'm Rija, Director of Epidemiology from FV, United States. I have a quick question on this topic. I know that FDA Center developed a statistical program posted on the public website. It was developed mostly by Harvard group. I wonder whether you use that program or you develop a program yourself. I just want to see whether that program works. You posted it on the website because we use a method the group sequential the statistics posted by the FDA Center program. There was a little bug in that program. So, actually, we figured out and fixed it and it worked. Actually, if we just use that program, it did not work. There was a little small bug. So I just want to see whether you use the program posted on the website. There's a tree scan in the website, or you develop this program with this yourself or by your group.
No, I just use the tours they put on the website. There's a website for these tours called, if you search in Google tree scan, you can find it. I simply use it.
You did use the program developed by that group.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. The Central University, that's maybe we check
So thank you very much for your presentation.
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shankai Yan. I'm from the Department of Computer Science in City University of Hong Kong. And this project is supported by the King's College London and the Francis Crick Institute. And I got involved into these projects when I was visiting students in King's College London. And now I'm a research associate in City University of Hong Kong. So the topics, this is my pleasure to give presentations here. And today's the topic of my presentation is about the novel HLA subclass clustering method to characterize the liver toxicity phenotype. So, in my presentation, I will briefly introduce the backgrounds of these projects because this is only the pilot projects of our studies. So, we adopt some conclusion and data from the previous studies. And this presentation will include two parts. One is the introduction of the previous studies, and another part is my method for the HRA subclustering. So the objective of our project is to identify, to identify the representative liver toxicity subclasses based on the human leukocytes antigens, class 1 and class 2 genotype. And so here's the background. As we know, the drug-induced liver injury refers to the adverse liver reactions to the prescription drugs. And approximately one case happens in every 7,500 drugs exposed per year. And a survey indicates that the idiosyncratic drug-induced liver injury accounts for 11% of the actual liver failure cases within the United States. And in our previous study, which is from the reference at the bottom, shows that the human leukocytes antigens, class 1 and class 2, the risk genetic variance is highly associated with the drug-induced liver injury. So this is the motivation for us to start this study. So the human leukocytes antigens is a gene complex, including the major histocompatibility complex proteins in humans. We call it MHCs in short. And the MHC class 1, which is represented by the characters 1 ADC, presents the peptides from inside the cell, and the class 2 presents the antigens from outside the cells to the T cells. And from our preliminary analysis, also from the same publications, examines the HR class 1 and class 2 genetic associations with the drug-induced liver injury phenotype data. It's actually a liver injury type that we observed from the patients. So this is the results from our previous studies of drug-induced liver injury. And in this study, we have totally 367 cases, And these patients are from 3 different regions in Europe and UK. And we have 2 batches of controlled. And totally we have more than 800,000 SNPs here as the biomarkers. And the results in our previous studies shows that significant associations with the SNPs in chromosome 6 is highly correlated with the drug-induced liver injury. From the figures shown on the right-hand sides, and from the subfigure 8, we can see that it's not very clear. The dots in red color and the green colors is located in the chromosome 6, and they have higher correlations. We use the indications p-values in the genome-wide analysis in our study, and the subfigure B is zooming figures of subfigure 8 within the chromosome 6, and we also label the human leukocyte antigens genotypes at the top of this subfigure B. And so let's move on to another the details of my methods for this subclustering. And the first step is to extract the phenotype data from the patient's data. So we collect the clinical data from these 3 groups of patients and then convert the phenotype into numeric data. And the second step is to extract the genotype data. As I mentioned before, the genotype data is adopted from the previous studies, so we just use it. And then from another study, we also conduct the select the most highly associated SNPs to perform our experiments. The reason why we use the top 1,000 SNPs as beginning, because it would greatly shorten the time of the experiments, and then we just want to see whether did my algorithm works or not. So we just simply select the top 1,000 data, and then use p-length is a tool to clean the data and also conduct the quality control. So we have the genotype data as shown in the tables on the right side. And then, because we know that the human leukocyte antigens data is published online, so it's more trustable. So we want to include this information in our study. Okay, and then we combine these 2 data together to have the conduct our experiments. So we have the original feature space as the genotype data, and the phenotype and the HRE labels as constraints to conduct the clustering experiments. And this is the key points in most important parts of my clustering method. And we calculate the basic distance from the original distance matrix using Euclidean distance or Matheron distance, and then use the covariance of the constraint labels to conduct the covariance matrix, and then we combine these 2 distances together to calculate the weight distance. So after that, we use the agglomerative clustering to try to conduct a hierarchical clustering to find the subgroups of the samples so that it could represent these subgroups of the human leukocyte antigens. So this is the performance of the clustering results. So with different linkage method. So we show that the average linkage method works better. And here's the final results of our clustering results. And in the most ideal cases, the cluster will separate into two subgroups in the first figure. And in the second figure, we will have a more robust data that is close to the reality data situations. So we can see the HRA labels constraints together with the least conflicts of the phenotypes. And this is all of my presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very interesting topic. So I just have a question to you. Clarify your clustering is focused on the phenotype or on the genotype or combined together?
Actually, we will combine two types of the data together. As we can see that here. This is the cluster method is semi-supervised learning method, and then we use the genotype as the original feature space on the left-hand side, and then we use the phenotype data as the constraints in our clustering method. The objective of this semi-supervised learning is to that we want to cluster the patients according to the genotype, but we want to have the least conflict in the phenotype, which means that we want to separate the patients in different subtypes according to the drug-induced liver injury phenotype.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zhanjun Ren. I come from Princess Margaret Cancer Center, and I also come from Mass China Hospital, Sichuan University. Today my topic is multiple imputation and clinical serological models to predict HPV status in oropharyngeal squamous cell carcinoma. It's an alternative when tissue is unavailable. Firstly, I want to introduce our objects. The first one is that we want to compare the performance characteristics of different methods to predict HPV status, such as the multiple imputation and HPV serology, and our newly developed clinical serological models against the P16 immunohistochemistry. This is a current worldwide standard for identifying HPV infection. And the second objective is to identify some alternative methods for estimating HPV status that can improve the quality of epidemiology studies if tissue is unavailable. As we know that according to the HPV status, we can the oropharyngeal squamous cell carcinoma can be divided into two distinct subtypes. And these two subtypes has now been staged and treated very differently and has a very different prognosis. As for the HPV negative OPSCC, we consider they are mainly related to tobaccos and excess alcohol consumptions. But for those HPV positive OPSCC, they had a better treatment response and the better prognosis than those HPV negative counterparts. However, the HPV detection method right now varies across the board. And the most common testing method for HPV includes the HPV DNA detection and HPV mRNA testing and P16 immunohistochemistry. And the method mentioned above are mainly tissue-based techniques. So all of these methods have some limitations. The first one is the logistic and the expenses when we are shipping our samples across the world or across different institutions. The second one is that some patients, they were treated without surgery, such as radiation or radiochem radiation, so that they have no tissue available. And for the tumor samples, most of them were small fragments which were taken by forceps or needle biopsy, so the tissue used for HPV testing is very insufficient. And for most of the epidemiological studies, they did not obtain the consent to access the tumor tissues. And also that most of the clinicians, they have a selection bias. They favor to take the HPV status for those patients who were younger and who had less smoking or alcohol consumptions. And the most important thing is that these tissue-related issues has already impacted our cancer registration reporting work. For example, the source data used for the annual Canadian cancer statistics, they had assumed that all the incidence rates changes over the years has attributed to the HPV status. And this is just an assumption because there's no data available for their reports. In this study, we included 783 OPSCC patients who had both P16 and serological test. We divided them into two groups. One is used for training and the other one is used for validation. We collected all the demographic data for those patients, which includes 16 clinical factors, such as the tumor stage and the tumor subsite, smoking or alcohol the data. And we also conducted the multiplex assays for 41 individual serological markers for all the samples. We use P16 immunohistochemistry as a gold reference. And we built multiple imputation models and use univariable and multivariable logistic regression models in this study. And the interesting outcome in our study is mainly overall survival and the disease-free survival. The table 1 presents the general clinical and demographic data for our patients. From this table 2, we conducted a univariable analysis for all the serological markers we have tested. And from the top 3, we can see that they perform best in the odds ratio and sensitivity, specificity, and accuracy. But from this table, we can also have information that HPV16 phenotype tended to predominate the HPV status predictive ability. And I want to explain for the abbreviation for the first line, which is the composite HPV serological results. This result is defined by the DFKZ lab, which created the definition for HPV status when we doing serological results. And they used 20 serological biomarkers to define the HPV infection. Of the 41 serological markers we analyzed, we found that the HPV16E6 with 1000 MFI cutoff performed best, and their sensitivity is 84% and their specificity is 95%. And then we conducted some logistic regression models for our study. The first model is that we include 4 significant clinical factors to build the basic clinical models. And the second model is that we add the composite serological HPV status into the basic clinical models. to see how they have the predictive ability for HPV status. The third model is that we added the single HPV16/E6 biomarkers into the basic clinical models to see their effects. And the first model is just to use the composite HPV serological results, which is a composite result for 20 biomarkers. And the fifth model is that we use multiple imputation models. This model has been created by our team members and has already been published on the CMAJ. In our table 3, we can see that we use Harry C-index to evaluate the predicting effect for all these models. And we can see the two clinical serological models performed best in predicting the P60 status and the outcomes. In the KM curves we conduct, we can also see the overall survival and DFS survival has the similar trend in different models. And they compare with P60 status, they had also similar trends. In order to figure out how well does these models predict for outcomes over time, we conduct time-dependent analysis for all these models. And we can see that our clinical serological models perform better than other models, and they stand in the top of the figures. Hence, we conclude that in head and neck squamous cell carcinoma, when we're looking at the real-world observational data where HPV status is unknown, our study demonstrates that when blood samples are available, a model that utilizes single HPV16/E6 antibody combined with 4 clinical factors has excellent test performance to estimate the HPV status and prognosis. And its cost-effective fact is much better than use a composite HPV serological biomarkers. However, when neither blood nor tumor tissue is available, multiple imputation, which uses clinical factors only, can remain a variable but suboptimal option. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Very good presentation. And I wonder why you choose C-index, not other indicators.
Because C-index is statistical method to evaluate the predicting ability for all these models, and we think it's the C-index in our study can use to evaluate the predictive ability here.
Is there any similar studies that you could compare?
Yeah. We have actually our statisticians has done lots of this kind of work and has published many papers use this kind of method. You can, if you are interested, I can send you this kind of papers. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The topic of my presentation is the impact of administration schedules on high-dose methotrexate medication in osteosarcoma, a systematic review and meta-analysis. And to address this question, I will divide my talk into 3 parts. Let me start with the introduction of osteosarcoma and methotrexate. Osteosarcoma is the primary tumor of bone, which is uncommon in clinical practice and most occurs in children and adolescents. Osteosarcoma is hard to treat, and surgery and systemic chemotherapy were usually combined. And when it comes to chemotherapy, many guidelines recommend methotrexate as first-line chemotherapy drug. Methotrexate is a folate antagonist with a broad range of anti-tumor activity, and generally, high-dose methotrexate is defined as dose of more than 0.5 gram per square meter. And in osteosarcoma, the dose is usually up to 8 to 12 gram per square meter. The use of HDMTX prolongs the survival, but it also results in various severe problems. And the impact of administration schedules on HDMTX medication in osteosarcoma includes safety and efficacy. However, there is no consensus about it at present. So, our study aims to systematically review the impact of administration schedules on HDMTX medication in osteosarcoma, investigate the optimal administration schedules, and finally provide references for clinical practice. Now, I'd like to move on to the methods and results of our study. Firstly, several international databases were systematically researched. Secondly, 2 reviewers independently screened scores to identify eligible studies. We included studies investigating the impact of different administration schedules on HDMTX medication in osteosarcoma. We concerned about outcomes related to safety and efficacy of MTX. And some studies were included for the following reasons. And this is the flow chart of our record screening. Thirdly, the methodological quality of included studies were evaluated by 2 reviewers back-to-back through tools of NOS and MINUS. NOS was adapted to evaluate the quality of cohort studies and case control studies. And MINUS was adapted to evaluate the quality of non-randomized clinical trials. And Table 1 shows the results of quality evaluation. The average NOS score was 7.75, which means high quality. The MINUS score was 18, which means moderate quality. And so the overall quality was high. Then 2 reviewers extracted data from included studies back-to-back. And this table shows the basic information of included studies. Finally, we analyzed the data by meta-analysis and qualitative analysis. We used software review manager and fixed effect model. We adapted Q-test and I-square to evaluate inconsistency. If there was a significant inconsistency, we will refer to the results of subgroup analysis or sensitivity analysis. And if the number of included studies was more than 10, we will evaluate publication bias by funnel plot. The impact of administration schedules on HDMTX medication includes 3 parts. The first aspect is plasma concentration of MTX. And figure 2 shows that dose of 8 was superior to 10 in lowering the plasma concentration at 0 hour post HDMTX. But the inconsistency was significant. And the subgroup analysis indicated that the difference of ages could account for the inconsistency. And figure 3 shows that dose of A was superior to 10 in lowering the plasma concentration at 24-hour post-HDMTX. And the inconsistency was similar to that in the last slide. Overall, meta-analysis indicated that dose of A was superior to 10 in lowering the plasma concentration at 0, 24, 48, 72-hour post-MTX. The overall inconsistency was significant, and subgroup analysis indicated that different ages accounted for the inconsistency. On the other hand, qualitative analysis shows that the shorter the infusion time was, the higher the plasma concentration of MTX at 24-hour was. And the second aspect is safety. Figure 4 shows that dose of A was superior to 10 in lowering the incidence of liver toxicity, and there was no inconsistency. And qualitative analysis showed that the lower the dose was, the lower the incidence of leukopenia and thrombocytopenia was. And the third aspect is efficacy. Only 2 studies reported related outcomes, and no association was observed. And because only 5 studies were included, the publication bias couldn't be excluded. And finally, I will make some conclusions from our studies. Firstly, the overall quality of included studies was high quality. And secondly, the lower the dose of MTX was, or the longer the infusion time was, the lower the plasma concentration of MTX and incidence of MTX-induced toxicity might be. At the same time, the efficacy of MTX might not differ significantly. Therefore, we recommend probably lower dose of MTX, like 8 grams per square meter, and longer infusion time, like 6 hours, for treatment of osteosarcoma at present. And we also recommend that administration schedules should be individual, according to patients' individual situation. And an ideal administration schedule should keep a good balance between toxicity and efficacy. However, there were some limitations in our study too. First, the number of included studies and the sample was very limited. And the administration schedules in some studies differed greatly. And there was no study investigating the impact of loading dose on HDMTS medication. Therefore, we'll design a large-scale studies in osteosarcoma are still required to verify our conclusions. And that's all that I want to talk. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you a lot, Dr. Huang. I have a question about your statistical model set in the RevMan. I noticed that you set your statistical model as fixed model. But you have just mentioned that the homogeneity is not guaranteed, but you set fixed model. Is that correct. I want you to explain why you choose that model, and is there anything you do to deal with the consistency of the studies? I'm quite curious about these 2 points.
Thank you. I choose the fixed model at first, and in my study, I didn't want to change the statistic model because the number of the studies included was very limited. So we think change the statistics model didn't make some sense. And your second question is?
Thanks for the answer for the first question. And my second question is there anything you have done to deal with the consistency?
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on your solutions on the inconsistency?
When there exists inconsistency, we refer to the result of subgroup analysis. And then find where the inconsistency derive from.
So I have a follow-up question. Would that be okay for me to ask? So there were 5 studies included, and you mentioned that you had 2 quality reviews. One was looking at cohorts and case control studies. One of the reviews was looking at trials. Of those 5 studies, can you tell us about which ones were cohorts, which ones were case controls, which ones were trials, and if they adjusted in different ways? Can you tell us a little bit about those 5 studies?
Actually, because the only one non-randomized study reported the outcomes related to efficacy, and the other study didn't report the same outcomes. So we didn't synchronize. So we didn't combine the study, and we only qualitatively analyze the outcomes of the only non-randomized study. So.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here today. I'm a postgraduate student in the General Hospital of People Liberation Army. This morning, I'd like to talk about our team's research. We use a computer-assisted ADR alarm and assessment system to evaluate post-marketing safeties of moxifloxacin. My talk is divided into 4 main sections. This presentation will last about 10 minutes. Okay, let's begin with the background. In this section, I will talk about 2 parts: ADR surveillance in China and moxifloxacin-related ADR. First, I will make a brief introduction about ADR surveillance in China. China has established a national ADR monitoring information network system over years. In this system, ADR are mainly reported by hospitals. In addition to the passive ADR reporting system, China has created the National ADR Monitoring Sentinel Alliance program. This is an active surveillance program based on electronic health records. The program was established in 2016. Before the national program started, our team had developed a computer-assisted ADR alarm and assessment system in 2012, which is earlier than the national program. Based on electronic medical records of our hospital, this system is a very good tool to evaluate post-marketing drug safety. Further, now it is applied in 8 hospitals. I will show how it works in method section. Let's move to the part 2. As we all know, fluoroquinolone has been warned by FDA and CFDA many times because it can cause many severe ADR, such as liver impairment and anaphylactic shock. Moxifloxacin as a fluoroquinolone antibiotic, but there is a few safety profile of it in Chinese population. So we want to know what's the incidence of moxifloxacin related liver impairment in Chinese population. What's the incidence of moxifloxacin related adverse skin reactions and anaphylactic shock in Chinese population? Does our system work well in other hospitals? To answer these specific questions, let's move to method section. In this section, we take 6 steps. Step 1, choose drug. We can choose drug name and surveillance time. In this case, we use moxifloxacin as our surveillance drug. Step 2, choose models. Our system includes multiple trigger models and text recognition models. According to different types of ADR, we can choose different models. In multiple trigger models such as liver function, we can monitor liver impairment. In text recognition models, we can monitor adverse skin reactions and anaphylactic shock. Step 3, set alert rules. I will take liver function model as an example. As the picture shows, we set alert rules according to the CFDA classification standards. Step 4, set exclusive rules. Exclusive rules are considered in 6 aspects: lack of key trigger indicators, temporary drug administration, abnormal baseline value, confounding special words, diseases, special drugs, and so on. We can set exclusive rules according to our need. Step 5, validate alert cases. There are 2 alert cases in the picture. This is the liver function. This is adverse skin reactions. The alert cases are validated independently by 2 clinical pharmacists. Step 6, report ADR. Then we can report ADR to CFDA. What's more, the ADR data also can be applied in more studies. Based on our system and method, we answer the questions that I have mentioned. I will talk about 2 results: liver impairment, adverse skin reaction, and anaphylactic shock. First, I will talk about liver impairment. In our hospital, it took our system about 10 minutes to screening about 2,000 cases. The number of ADR cases was 84, and the incidence was 4.7%, but no severe ADR was observed. According to the same stats, we screened about 9,000 cases in other 5 hospitals. The results are shown in the table. Then let's move to adverse skin reactions. In our hospital, it took our system screening about 8,000 cases. The number of ADR cases induced by moxifloxacin was 34 cases. The incidence is 0.53%. We also found that there were 35 cases induced by other drugs, as is shown in the table. Finally, let's talk about anaphylactic shock. The number of ADR cases induced by moxifloxacin was 1 case. The incidence was 0.015%. We also found that there were 3 cases induced by other drugs. In conclusion, I'd like to say moxifloxacin is well tolerated in Chinese population. Our system can quickly and accurately screen ADR cases. Our system is a very promising and active surveillance. However, there are still some problems and limitations. For example, more models need to be developed for monitoring more ADR. More measures need to be taken for data quality. Thank you.
That was a very interesting talk. I have 3 questions for you. Number 1, when you had on your slide, choose the drug. Could you tell, I didn't have a sense, were you looking at new initiators of moxifloxacin, or did you just identify people who were on moxifloxacin at any point? Second question I had was...
Can I ask one?
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah,
sure.
And then can I ask?
This is my first time to attend the international conference. My English is not good.
I can help translate. 第一个问题是问，在你的用药这些人群里面，都是第一次用，还是说是新用的，还是说他一直就在用？你只要说他只要用就算，还是你确定他是刚刚使用的？
这我能用中文讲。
He said he wants to speak in Chinese, and I can help translate.
Thank you. 这是那个只要是住院的病人，我们就都纳入。他这个不分第一次、第二次，因为有些人如果说住了多次院，比如说住了3次院，我们只算一个病人，我们就是按一个病人算，就是这时候考他如果住了多次院，就按第一次算，然后。
As long as the patient is hospitalized, and then it will be counted in the study, no matter how many times he's in the hospital. And it doesn't have to be initial drug users.
Okay, so these patients may have been on moxifloxacin as outpatients, and then were identified in the hospital.
有些人可能是在门诊用，然后会转到住院，是吧？
这个监测都是那个注射剂，莫西沙星的注射剂，就是。
Oh, they're all in IV, so they may not have in the outpatient.
And you mentioned that clinical pharmacists reviewed each of the patients who screened positive for liver injury. Can you just clarify what the procedure that was done for the pharmacists to confirm a case of liver injury?
你不是说会有2个医生 会看你所有的肝损害吗？你能给他讲讲具体的步骤是怎么做的吗？
那个我们国家有一个不良反应的判断标准，就是有5条标准，然后根据那个国家的规定来判断它是很可能、肯定还是可能，然后还是可能无关，然后无关，就是按照国家的标准有一个判断不良反应无关系的标准。
那你这2个人是怎么做的？
这2个人是那个分别判断，就是这个系统可以2个人就是跑出来结果2个人就是这个人判断的时候，那个人不知道他判断的什么结果，就是还是背对背的那样。
如果不一样，
如果不一样，就是还得请第3个人来裁决。
Yeah, first they follow the criteria from a national guideline of liver injury, and then for these 2 people. They will evaluate them separately, independently, like they don't know each other. And if there's disagreement, they will ask for a 3rd person. Other questions? Other questions? No? Questions from other?
Yes, I have a question. Looks like you only tested for like a 1 hour period, like after exposure to the medication. So my question is that have you, because for liver toxicity, sometimes will occur, just 1 hour period. Have you tested like a longer period of time? The same for the skin reaction.
就是你说的肝损害是用药之后1个小时的，发生这种肝损害。你们有没有看就更长时间发生这种肝损害，或者这个皮肤的这些不良反应？
这个没有存在一个用药1小时之后，因为这肝损害那个它是只要是在住院期间，就是我们有它的监测指标。就是它有它的监测，甚至在住院期间不同日期的一个就是监测的肝功能的指标。然后它用药之后，然后就是也不一定是几天，只要是住院期间，就是有个合理的时间关系，就按照标准来判断。
There's no fixed period, as long as during the time of the hospitalization, it's all captured here.
Okay, so basically after exposure, and then as long as the patient is in the hospital, and then they would, this is so-called follow-up period.
Yeah.
Right. So do you have the average, the stay, average time the patient stayed in the hospital?
所以病人住院的平均的时间是多少？住院？
平均住院的时间？
对，就这些病人。
它不是一个正态分布，它应该是
大约
中位数是15天。
短的多少，长的多少？短的几天，长的几天？
那个极限就是有的是最小值应该是3天，然后最大值有可能住到了60天。所以说不是一个正态分布。
平均是几天来着？
平均15，中位数是15。
Yeah, generally, the average is like 15 days. The range is like 3 days to 60 days.